Hello, welcome to Lunch and Learn with Upgrading Women. Hold on. This is like, I left my microphone a little bit away from me, and there you are. So, I have been a speaker in many webinars and trainings, but this time I'm going to host the first of many Lunch and Learn sessions, which is a quick and chill fireside chat about topics that we believe will upgrade us as women at work. So, feel free, grab your sandwich or your soup, whatever that your lunch food is. For me, my lunch food is always rice with loads and loads of protein, like fried chicken and stuff like that. But I know that in some culture, sandwich is enough, but it won't touch my tummy. So today I have the privilege to invite Sophie O'Kelly, a woman in tech, my favorite. She is the product manager of Fika, a team building software. I didn't even know that team building can be done on an app. So this is perfect, especially now that I run remote teams, distributed teams in 3 different continents. So Fika trains your mental fitness with micro training exercises that you can do as a team or on your own for as little as 5 minutes. And Fika make training your mental fitness part of your daily routine and make every day at work a bit better. My team and I actually tried Fika, and it's so fun. One of them that was our favorite is like, if you could have a superpower, what superpower it is. And I think we all agree that a superpower to stop time is the best, because then we can take a nap. Okay, a girl needs a nap. So yeah, Fika releases new training every month, and guess who is the trainer in the latest course? It's me, of course. And I'm going to show you a little clip. It's just so funny. I love it.
We shouldn't say less. It should be fewer. No. Have you ever faced a really tricky audience? What do I do? Step 1. I stop and take a breath. It's okay to take a moment to think before you respond. And it works like this. It's the little things that make the biggest difference. Are you ready to give it a try? Let's do it.
Yes, I know that you're ready. So since we're gonna start and finish on time, I'm gonna hand over to Sophie O'Kelly, and she is going to share. Well, she and I, we chat on my podcast a couple of months ago, and even she and I, we're very confident alpha females, but but we still experience imposter syndrome and not knowing, like, we actually can communicate with authority, especially in the boardroom. Come on, Sophie, take it over.
Cool. Thanks, Rebecca. So I am the head of product at Fika, as you mentioned. And like you say, that I don't think being able to communicate with authority and confidence is something that happens overnight. So here to share some of my lessons. Let me just share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So why, I guess, product, why are we talking about communicating with authority? Well, in product, especially the more senior you get, the more your job is really about using your authority to kind of defend the fort, defend the roadmap, the strategy, the vision. And that involves, for me, quite a lot of saying no, a lot of stakeholder management, because you're kind of at the intersection of so many things. And it's really about holding your own, even when the CEO is trying to kind of change the direction. So I think it's a bit of me being trained in these things over the last few years that has led me into product. But a lot of it is me being forced to get good at it because I'm in product. So today I'm simply here to share 3 lessons I've learned from being in large organizations, small organizations and startups, dealing directly with C-suites, innovation teams, delivery teams, etc. On how to communicate with more confidence, right? That's something we all want to achieve, and ultimately get each of us to be heard better, make our voice a little louder, be a bit more visible, because for many of us, as we know, that's kind of a key to career progression and promotion. So to do that, I'm just going to set a scene and use this kind of throughout. I'm sure you all have slightly different jobs, slightly different things going on week to week. Tomorrow, for me, let's imagine I've got a meeting where I'm going to present a direction we've got with, say, 8 senior stakeholders from different departments across my business. So in my case, maybe it's a product feature that I've decided, and me and my product team have decided on. Some of the things I might be feeling going into that maybe some of you can resonate with, Tim from sales is always tearing my stuff apart and he's going to be really difficult. Or last time I presented to Joe, I ended up just giving in and doing everything that she wanted. Or maybe they're going to ask me questions and I just hate having to answer things on the spot. What if I don't know the answer? I don't want any feedback. Maybe I just think no one else knows what they're doing. I just want to continue what I'm doing. I want to ignore everybody else. I don't want to have to take them on a journey and show them anything. So these are obviously like pretty anxiety inducing thoughts. So kind of ask, and what I want to talk about is what we can do to reduce some of that anxiety that, for ourselves that we're feeling. And first, naturally that comes with being calmer and therefore appearing calmer, because often that's what shows outwardly. And having the confidence that we'll be able to stay in control of ourselves and in the conversation. And that confidence will come through, meaning we're better heard and in those moments where we do choose to talk. So 3 lessons. Personally, these are, I think, the most important things. And I bring them up because I think they're the things I most commonly see people getting wrong when they're kind of moving into maybe, in my world, a product management job for the first time, or maybe taking on a leadership role for the first time. So if I'm preparing for this meeting I've got tomorrow, I'm going to be double checking that my intent is right, that I can trust I have the right intent going into it. And I know that others can trust that I'll have the right intent. I will have thought about this product feature loads because that's what I do. But I'm going to present very, very little. I'll talk a bit more about that. And I will hold and be able to defend my opinion on what is right for the business. I'm going to be opinionated, and I'm not just going to seem opinionated. I will actually be opinionated and hold opinions. So let's just get into these 3. So what do I mean by intent? In some of those examples I listed out, feelings I might have, they're kind of telling me what kind of intent I have going into the discussion. And, let's be honest, if you don't say respect or have an interest in the opinions of the people you're talking to, that will come through whether or not you like it. If you're trying to force people into a direction that you ultimately decided in, that will also come through. If you're going to present a direction that you're pushing for just because you think it will look cool in your portfolio, or it's just a cool experiment you want to do, and it's not really aligned to the goals of the business, that will definitely come through. And then, to be fair, Tim from sales probably has a point. And why I say trust my intent is because sometimes I think we have to be honest with ourselves before we can be authentic and authoritative with others. So do you truly believe that your intent aligns with the priorities of the business? Do you even care about the priorities of the business? Does the direction you have truly deliver on the goals that, everybody in that room shares, and not just your own goals? And when I see people getting picked apart in discussions, it's often for this reason and actually nothing to do with the work. It's because the audience doesn't believe that people are doing something for the right reason. So, but, because people on this webinar have signed up to a webinar on communication, it's likely that they don't actually really have an issue with intent. They probably have really good intent and they probably care a lot. Is how you communicate that intent. Some people have the opposite problem. They're really, really good at communicating, but they have the wrong intent. And we've all been on the receiving end of those people where you're just like, are they just talking because they're gaming for a promotion, or they're just pushing this thing because it's just something they want to do, and you just kind of shut off, right? Because you're just like, their intent is wrong, and so therefore it doesn't really matter what they communicate, even if they're very loud. And maybe part of you is worried that you're going to come across like one of these people, and the fact is, if your intent is right, you probably won't. So you can kind of release yourself from that fear, and maybe welcome the idea actually instead that your voice, if you do have the right intent, could be a breath of fresh air in the conversation. And, maybe one that directs the group back onto the things that actually matter. And actually, if you're bringing the right intent, you're almost kind of doing a disservice to the meeting, to the discussion, to the coming together of minds by not bringing your thinking forward. So I'm on this call with, 8 human beings. What do they all care about? Why are we bringing these people together? And how do I cultivate a feeling that it's like we and not you versus me, and we're entering a battle? What's the common goal we've got? And lead the discussion with that. So for me here, maybe I'm going to start with the fact that we've all agreed that we want more customers by the end of Q2. That's what the business and everyone in the room wants. And today my intent is I'm going to share a feature that we have for meeting that goal so that we can get ahead of any potential blockers we're going to have moving forward, kind of using the collective brains, experience, and departments in the room. And in my experience, the more kind of senior a stakeholder you're presenting to, the more they're accountable for the success of or failure of the business ultimately. So the thing they want to hear more than anything is, do you care about and appreciate the priorities of the business? Because if a busy CEO trusts that I'm doing something for the right reasons, they will take great pleasure in leaving me alone to get on with it. If they can believe I'm doing it for the right reasons, it's amazing how much people will actually talk to you less and trust you to get on with stuff. Okay. So hopefully folks and myself can trust that I'm going in with the right intent. And now it's time to share for me my product direction I have ready. And this is where the thing I see most commonly, the thing that probably most commonly undermines people, even if they've got the best, idea or whatever it is just too much information. So do you think this presentation I'm giving you would have had more impact if it was 12 lessons or 3? Would you want me to walk you through my whole life, every job I've had, every experience I've got that helped me come to these conclusions? Do you want me to tell you how many different meetings I've had with this many different people and how this has got to me to where I am now? No, probably not. Like, you just want the actionable tips. And it's in my communication style, its simplicity and its directness that gives you the confidence in believing them. So in my experience, people who communicate with authority are often starting with the conclusion. So they start with the final recommendation or your final decision. Whereas people that are maybe nervous and lacking in confidence or worried about being questioned think that the way they'll get around that and the way they'll get people to believe them is by showing them or talking them through their entire thought process. Or the entire process the team took, or every option, every pro, every con considered along the way, because they feel like the detail makes it believable, right? Well, yes and no. I have to trust that the detail is there and it's been considered, but because I'm sure you've thought about the problem more than I have, because ultimately it's your project. You had more time on it than I did. And I'm sure some of that stuff is in your back pocket or in the appendix. But trust yourself, back yourself, and don't use stuff as your safety blanket in the conversation. The more senior, again, the audience is, ultimately, the more busy they are, the more context switching they're having to do meeting to meeting. The more they just want to get to the meaty bit, and they'll see all this context, all this fodder as nothing but potentially padding around a bad idea that's trying to make it seem better, or somehow like some justification for why this work has taken so long. It can just feel like you're being like beaten into submission with information when someone overloads you, almost like you're trying to kind of bamboozle or confuse me into believing you. So it's not necessarily bringing your audience in and trying to authentically, again, going back to trust my intent, try and help them really understand what you're saying. So don't undermine your points by showing everything. Here really less is more. Be selective and succinct. When you think about the most confident ads you've seen, they're simple, maybe one line of copy, one amazingly selected image. You don't doubt that a lot of effort went into creating that thing just because it's simple. If you really believe that what you're doing is the right thing, and again, like I said, you have the right intent, you really want to think about how you can communicate this with as little as possible. So I'm always thinking about, how do I make 5 slides into 1? How do I turn 100 words into 10? How do I turn a 20-slide deck into a 20-second prototype? Aim to get the point across as quickly as you can, the conclusion, and then free up more time at the end for conversation. Less is more as well applies to when you're responding to feedback and questions. So if someone asks you a question and you go on a 10-minute monologue, that doesn't really matter what you said. I'm completely lost. So I often respond to questions with questions. So that's an interesting idea. What's your inspiration for that? Do you have an example of how that's worked before? You keep the comments from others as opportunities for discussion and debate, and not necessarily instructions of things that you have to go and do. Which kind of brings us on to the last point around being opinionated. So people that communicate with authority are often people that have and hold an opinion on the subject in which they are talking about. So they don't just have a solution for something because it's their, it's their job to have one, and they're just kind of apathetic about the solution itself, really. They care, they have an opinion on the options available, they've thought about the problem, they have an interest in the different solutions, they've thought about those, and that all comes through, right? And it means as a senior stakeholder, so in my case, for example, like as a head of product and one of my PMs, I can trust that they are doing the kind of deep thinking, so that frankly, I don't have to. Your strength of opinion and my trust that you have the right intent, again, leaves me confident that I don't need to know all the details because they've probably got it all covered. Your goal here is to actually free your colleagues and stakeholders up from knowing as much about something as you do, not trying to get them up to speed with everything you know in an attempt to kind of prove your worth. In fact, you're doing me a favor because you're cutting through the noise for me and helping me get to the meaty bit. There's this saying, have you heard strong opinions loosely held, that people use? That saying I always heard a lot when I worked in the US. And I kind of like that saying, but it often gets pretty misconstrued. So if you think about the word opinionated and you think of just someone who's like bulldozing everybody into their direction, they don't really care about being right by others, they just want to do what they want to do. Perhaps like some of these other phrases might help. So you are expressing an opinion when you tell me that you have your leading recommendation. And the more senior you get, again, the more you're having to make really quick decisions on something with a ton of moving parts, not all the information. There will always be opinions you have to make that are not bulletproof. So you're sharing with me your best guess, your hypothesis, or simply, this is just the version we're going to release with for now, and then we're going to learn and change it later. You don't need to pretend that your opinion is faultless. You just have to communicate an opinion on the best next step for the team to take, so that you're on the side of progress rather than just kind of stalling everything. Because if you don't really care, the kind of flip of all of this is, if you don't really care and you don't have an opinion on any solutions, that's fine. But it's going to make it very hard for you to move up. And it certainly means if, there's, say, the team is stuck or they're facing a big decision, they certainly won't look to you for authoritative direction. Yeah. So if you care about progressing into more senior positions and communicating with authority, have a strongly held opinion in your mind before a discussion. So I spend a lot of time walking around and thinking about my work, as well as actually bashing keyboards and doing it. So go on a walk and think about what it is. If the CEO stopped you tomorrow and asked, what do you think? What would you say? And I can guarantee they would much rather hear you say, I think X, rather than, well, it could be A, B, or C. I don't really mind, whatever you think. Most of the time, we already have an opinion, but almost like in our desire to be more democratic, I think, especially in Europe, we almost don't share it. So use these phrases if that helps to share it, or simply just say, in my opinion, but that doesn't remove the need to have an opinion. And then whether or not you have whether or not you hold a thought out opinion comes out strongest, I think, in those moments when the stakeholders begin to provide feedback or ask questions or kind of, probe you. The moments when you have to defend that opinion ultimately. So the biggest mistake I see in these situations is people kind of folding the kind of immediate second that someone questions them. Like they're presenting the direction, someone says, how about this? And they just kind of deflate and give into that. People who are comfortable talking, and that tends to obviously increase the more senior you are, throw out opinions all the time. Like I do this with my team. So often I'm just thinking out loud. Like I'm not actually giving instruction. So we can't assume it is an instruction. Filter all the points that come into you as ones you're going to consider going forward or not. They're just like series of additional things for you to think about. And this is why I do like the phrase strong opinions loosely held, because it's about defending firmly until you receive feedback, ideas, thoughts, whatever, that actually do change your opinion. You can have an open mind enough that you're not fixed on one thing. So, your hypothesis might change, might develop once genuine points of consideration come through. But of course, your stakeholders might have more experience, or they might have different types of knowledge, or different areas they oversee. So there will absolutely be times when they say something and it makes you think, that's a great point. I need to take that away and consider it. I'm certainly not folding into everything they say in the moment. and from what everyone else is telling me to do. You don't have to decide in the moment. Make space for consideration afterwards if you don't have confidence on making on-the-spot decisions. So that's it tomorrow in my meeting. If I trust my intent, if I figured out how to consolidate the vast amount of thinking I've done into something small and succinct, and if I've got a firm opinion in my mind, I believe that means it's going to go a lot more successfully for me. I believe we've got a little bit of time for questions. Before we get into that, I just want to leave you with a few final footnotes. First of all, the only way to get better at any of this is by practicing. So obviously, there's finding times to present and talk to groups and things like that, but actually you can do it even in small ways. So maybe ask someone if you can just present a bit of the meeting, or maybe if there's going to be a Q&A, ask someone to throw a question in your direction next time that meeting comes about. Find these opportunities to practice, because for me, like I think one of my friends on the call, like share your opinion with friends at the pub, just whatever. You just need to practice like vocalizing these things in front of other human beings. And then it kind of reduces the barrier and the kind of anxiety involved in doing it. Next, bring back to your point at the very beginning, Rebecca, you kind of get a sense through all of this that to be successful in doing these three things, there's kind of an underlying reliance on having self-belief, self-confidence, less crippling self-doubt. and that doesn't just happen, right? At Fika, we believe there are 7 skills of mental fitness, and one of those skills is confidence. So we believe through regular exercises each week, you can train and improve your confidence. How do I do that? Well, here's one you did earlier, Rebecca. We actually obviously worked with yourself on creating 5-minute techniques you can use every week at work to increase your confidence, get heard better. And we've got tons more courses in Fika. So if anybody's interested in getting Fika into your team or organization, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or reach out to me after. And that's it from me. My 3 lessons. Hopefully that is useful for you, no matter where you're at in your career. I'm excited to hopefully get into some questions.
Yes, please drop your questions on the chat box. Thank you, Lauren, for joining us today. And feel free also to pop in on the chat what you're having lunch. I'm always curious about what people have lunch, and they would inspire me to probably cook after this. So if I can summarize what you have shared with us. So before you go into the boardroom, even though you're not the one presenting, but just as an attendee, I think you have to define what success looks like, success of that meeting. I know that most of us join a meeting sometimes like, why am I even in the room? Why am I even invited? Right? And I think it's good for you to question, like literally, if you don't know why you're even invited, ask whoever invited you. And probably they do have a good reason. Like, oh yeah, because I want your thoughts on so-and-so. And therefore you come in already with preparation, not just sitting there and wasting everyone's time because you probably are better doing other things. And also brush up, I guess, of what is especially working in a startup environment, that there is always a new milestone, a new goal in the company. Like there's always something that you need. Okay, so what is now the company's new, not finish line, but like in the second quarter, what are we chasing towards, right? Is it like so-and-so number of new users, or we want to have the current user doing whatever, brushing up on the new or the latest business question so that you are going to be in the same wavelength or literally on the same page as the senior leadership will help you, because then the discussion is aligned with the intent of the whole company, right? And
I think that's just to add that's very much to the first point, which is you can trust your own intent. So for me, it's kind of easy because I am part of setting those goals in a smaller organization right now. But even when I worked in larger organizations, like I know what our goals are at this moment in time, and I've even formed an opinion on whether I agree with them or not, and therefore the ones I agree on, I'm obviously helping us work towards. When people don't, and this is where I go back to whether or not senior stakeholders will trust you, believe you. Again, it comes back, you're speaking in an authoritative way. If you're working on the right things with the right intent, that will come through, and that's all people want to hear. All they want to do is trust that you understand like why you're doing it, why it matters to the business, and therefore the solution you're presenting is kind of like, actually I don't even necessarily need to know as much about that, because I trust if you get those things, it does a lot to make meaning that by the time you get to your solution, I'm actually trusting you. I'm already on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, as you mentioned, starting with the recommendation and then having the evidence that will, back up your assertions, just either in the back pocket or just leave it in the slide and then only show it for when there's questions. That shows that, what, I don't need to, I trust my research and my team, when you're presenting. But at the same time, if you do have a follow-up question, I have it here for you. Now, the last thing, this is, as women, this is the hardest thing to be opinionated, because how do we not come across as irritating, annoying, bossy, etc. And at the same time, we also want to come across as confident. And again, that we have authority, that this is our subject matter. So Lauren here has a question like, how do you overcome sharing your opinion when you yourself have doubt? And I remember, I think it's President Barack Obama that said, and he was always under scrutiny, right? He said, like, at any given time as a decision maker, you can only be certain at most 70%. Exactly. You can never be 100%. But again, how do we then showcase our opinion while having that doubt, also knowing that we have to be humble enough to know that we're not ever be 100% until we try? How do you normally communicate that?
I guess, first of all, the worry about will I not come across as humble, you can almost like put aside, because if you're worrying about that, you already are. Like, people that are not, don't even think about it. So like, if you're worried, am I going to come across as arrogant? You probably won't, because like, you're worried about it.
The fact that you're worried, you're already
conscious of that. Exactly. It goes back to these things. Yeah. So I'd say, like, if you're not comfortable being like, this is my opinion, it's a hypothesis. It's my top recommendation. Like I said, there's no such thing as a faultless opinion, a faultless hypothesis. Everything, and like you said about the Obama example, I'm having to make decisions as a senior product person all the time with just the best information I've got. Like, that is just how businesses operate. And the more senior you get, the more you have to make more decisions based off less information that have to hold up higher and get more tomatoes thrown at. That is for sure. So you have to get comfortable with the idea that you are going to share things that have things that might not be right. So I think it's about phrasing it like this. I think it's a little bit slightly more comfortable way of doing it. Saying my leading recommendation is an opinion. My opinion is, of all the options available, we should do this one. Why? I explain why, because you've come to that conclusion. So that's why I say the think loads, show little. You don't need to explain every single reason why you've come up with that opinion. You just share, this is my leading recommendation. Then when someone goes, what about this? What about that? You've already thought about it, but you don't need to kind of lead with that. Mm-hmm. You just need to lead with like, my key thing is this. And that's what comes across as a lot more confident. If someone has the confidence to lead with their one direction and explain why that direction is happening. If people start picking it apart, sure, we can go back and we can go into the detail. But most of the time, if you can have like a really well articulated leading direction, and it's clear that your intent is right, then people don't have any reason to question it. So you don't have time either.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that we say leading recommendation as opposed to final recommendation, or like first version. This is my first draft, and we welcome your thoughts and your perspective as well. I know that you have to hop off, Sophie. So I'm going to say goodbye to you now. Thank you for joining, and I'm going to close the webinar in a minute. So yeah, thank you so much, Sophie.
Awesome. No worries. Have a great day. See you later.
Bye. All right. So that was Sophie, and she's, I remember she was saying to me, oh my God, I would not even, if I call myself an engineer, a lot of other engineers would laugh me out of the room. And that is a lot of us. I'm a communications expert. And the moment I say expert, I get like irked, like, am I really the expert? Like, I don't have a PhD, etc. But that is the internal imposter syndrome that we have to struggle with every single day. And speaking of communications, we know that having a strong personal brand is always what I advocate to my friends, to my audience, everywhere I go. And I just want to give you a little bit of sneak peek on what the team and I are working on at Upgrading Women before I close. So we know that our personal brand, having a strong personal brand, will bring us more growth, more exposure, and more opportunities, even within our own companies. Because again, if we're working in a growing company, the senior leaders are always thinking about the future, what's going to happen next year. And guess who will be leading those projects, if not the most established person in the team? But who has the budget to hire a whole agency for to build your own personal brand? So this is what the team and I have put together. And next Friday, we're going to do a 90-minute masterclass on how we use AI, in this case, ChatGPT, and journal requests, as in journalists out there, especially on Twitter. If you go and see hashtag journal requests, it's journalists from all over the world looking for stories, and that stories might be you as, quote unquote, the expert of your own niche. It can be insurance, it can be banking, it can be feminine product, it can be whatever tech that you're working on. And these days, you don't have to already be Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, etc., to be quoted in the news. It can be just, quote unquote, just you. So here, if you scan on the screen, you'll be taken to the Eventbrite page, or you can, I think it's on the chat as well. If you can just click and sign up there, it'll be quick and easy. I will be joined by the CEO of a PR agency, a digital PR agency called Unlocked PR. So I'm so looking forward to that, and how we're going to use AI to help us for free and get actual, what do you call it, brand awareness, our personal brand splashed on Google. Like if we Google our name, we come up there as the expert. So that is all for today at Lunch and Learn with Upgrading Women. I hope you enjoy that and be refreshed in your mind that you are the authority of your own subject matter, that the next time you walk into that meeting room, or even just a virtual meeting room, you go there with confidence that what you're talking about, you really have done your research, you've done your homework, and therefore people should listen to you. With that, I wish you a fun and fearless week ahead, everyone. Bye for now.